Assalamu alaikum and welcome. You're listening to me, Shazia, on Unity FM 93.5 FM. This is the Nutrition Show, and it's an amazing opportunity to be with you again. Really excited to have you all join me today for a discussion on health and well-being through nutrition. Before we dive in, I would like to remind listeners that all information shared on today's show is general in nature. For anyone with any medical concerns related to today's show or otherwise, please do seek medical advice from your general practitioner. So, today, after a very long delay, I have the honour of being joined by a very special guest. So my apologies, this is all down to me. It's not anything to do with our guest at all, but it's going to be well worth the wait. Qualifying as a nutritional therapist in 2017 from a well-known college, she works in women's health to support with conditions related to the female intimate health area. Now, this includes peri and post-menopausal situations, bladder and vaginal health, as well as optimising conception. She had a personal journey to where she is now and why she does what she loves, but her story started quite differently, having been in the corporate role for 8 years prior. She holds a first-class master's degree in arts from the University of Edinburgh in psychology and business. Quite an amazing transition, I'm sure. Hello and welcome, Jessica Childs.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Thank you so much.
It's lovely to be here.
Absolute pleasure to have you. So I can't wait to get in. It's such an amazing topic, and I'm so keen on learning from you. I have been eagerly awaiting this interview, which was delayed, unfortunately, as I mentioned, for months. There's so much valuable knowledge to be shared. I am sure that what the listeners will take away from today's show will be incredibly useful at whatever stage of life they're at. And there may be some people just out there thinking, this is exactly what I needed to hear. So the areas that you work in are so important when it comes to female health. And I would like to say this, I think it's really, really important that this one is not just for you ladies out there who are listening, but you men folk will benefit from listening in too, because it's never a one-way story, right? So we're there to support each other, and I think it's important that we're aware of each other's health conditions so we can actually do that. So I'm sure by the end of the show, this is going to be very much more apparent, and I think we should just get started and see what amazing pearls that you have to share. So the areas of your work are incredibly important, Jessica, and there are clients seeking this type of support so often. I mean, I come across them in my work as well. So for the benefit of our listeners, would you mind sharing a little bit about your amazing journey to how you got to what you're doing today, and why did you choose intimate health, female health?
That's fine. So I have a diploma in nutritional therapy, and I just switched from kind of working very long hours for kind of big clients because I just wanted to do something a bit more fulfilling and centered around kind of people. And I love everything to do with health. And a few years ago, I did some specialist training in women's intimate health. So really, we're talking vaginal health and bladder health. Because I basically suffered from a string of UTIs straight after I had my second child. And it was quite a frightening period because I wasn't responding fully to antibiotics. I had about 3 within a month.
Goodness.
And this UTI just kind of persisted. What I really struggled with is that I had a lot of urine tests at the GPs over months, and they all came back negative. So, I was told there's nothing there, you're fine, but I still had these symptoms. And although I kind of managed myself to reduce the kind of acute UTI that I had, I still had ongoing bladder issues that just weren't normal. And this is when I kind of really dived into this area where I found out that a lot of the testing that GPs do, although with some women it detects bacteria, with a lot of women actually it goes undetected. So, just one example, I work with a lot of chronic UTI sufferers where we try to uncover the root cause of their issues. And actually, a lot of the time it is microbial. It's just that kind of the NHS hasn't been able to detect that. And it kind of led me into this world of working with women and their intimate health. And this includes things like I work with women with vaginal imbalances, so BV that won't go away, that's bacterial vaginosis, recurrent thrush. And I also work with women with chronic UTIs and bladder problems, so things that have been termed interstitial cystitis or ongoing kind of painful bladder syndrome. Because a lot of the time these conditions are very complex and require a lot of time with an expert who's trained in this setting to have a look at what may be driving these symptoms. And it can be a whole host of things, from hormones, your immune status, your diet, to the state of the microbiome. So that's kind of the bacterial inhabitants of these areas. And a lot of the time as well, it can take quite a journey to come out of these symptoms, because there's various corrections that we can make to rebalance the body and then try to get them back on a kind of a path to health.
Amazing.
And it's just so lovely being part of this area, and something that is, under discussed with friends, under discussed with the GPs. And I think it's really important for women to know that if they are suffering from some of these conditions, there are other options out there, and there should be ways out.
Amazing. It gives so much hope, doesn't it, when people think that, I've tried everything and nothing is working and this is it, I'm going to be left with this to live with for the rest of my life. I really love what you say there, and that's what I really loved about nutritional therapy. It gives a lot of hope to people, where you feel like, oh, there's nothing else left to explore and nothing left to do. So it's amazing. And I always like to remind my listeners as well that they should always seek out appropriately trained practitioners, so they're not just working with anyone. That's someone who's got the knowledge, who's got the experience, who's got the accreditation. It's quite important, isn't it, to kind of make sure that you're getting help from the right places. So you've got that safety net, and you've got that kind of you've got that assurance there that you're getting the right sort of level of support, and it's backed up by evidence, isn't it? It's always evidence based.
Definitely. And something that we do a lot as well is I work with people's GPs or the consultants, because in a lot of cases, they might have had investigations, which are really useful. When there's chronic conditions, you should always investigate more, always see a GP. But we just support from a kind of another viewpoint, and that's looking at optimising diet, looking
absolutely.
at root cause. And so actually they work really nicely together alongside a GP. And we also look at all the test results that you can get from a GP. So all your blood results, which can be very useful as well at indicating kind of options to support your health, back to being better.
Absolutely. It's that kind of additional layer of support, isn't it? And it's kind of taking a deeper dive to find out what's going on. Amazing. I love all the different areas you're working with, and I'd love to talk about each one. But we are going to kind of tailor this down to one for the sort of the purpose of the show today. But before we go into that, I'd like to talk more about the vaginal microbiome. So would it be okay to find out a little bit more about what the microbiome is to begin with, and then what we mean when we talk about the vaginal microbiome, more specifically?
Yeah, that's fine. So a microbiome is simply a colony of microbes that we are found on our body and also within our body. So the colony might contain things like bacteria, fungi, so that's kind of yeast, and also any kind of parasites or viruses as well. Wow. So some examples of where microbiomes exist within the body are the gut. That's probably the most well-known one. And like a huge diversity of microbes within the gut that kind of helps us function. We also have microbiomes in our mouth, on the skin, and also within the vagina. And now even the bladder has been found to have a microbiome. Wow. So science used to think that urine was sterile and everything within there is sterile, but actually it's been found more recently that there are microbes there. there are microbes that can benefit the whole area.
Wow.
So, they can be quite anti-inflammatory and fight off any pathogens that happen to get there. But there can also be colonies of pathogenic bacteria residing within the bladder that can cause symptoms like UTIs, but also any kind of ongoing bladder issues. And the microbiome's role, wherever it is just to support the body. So generally it's quite protective and it helps its function when it's in health. The vaginal microbiome specifically, it actually keeps the whole canal quite acidic, which keeps it free from pathogens and also free from inflammation. And so this is quite relevant and important given it's the opening to the womb and then is quite linked to conception. And there has been quite a lot of recent studies now that have found links with the health of the vaginal microbiome and conception, and also things like miscarriage and preterm birth.
Okay.
So it is a very important area to look into now within that space.
Amazing. And is it something relatively new compared to the, we're only learning about the gut microbiome sort of from a general perspective now, as in like the new science that's emerging for many of us who are perhaps new to nutrition. But is this kind of, how old would you say this kind of finding is? Is it kind of relatively short term, or how did you discover it?
Most of the vaginal microbiome studies are within the last 2 decades. So if you look at various cohort studies that look at other studies, a lot of them are looking at ones that have been done this side of the millennium.
Okay, wow.
Which is fascinating. I think a lot of research has been within the gut over the last decade. And finding things like diversity is important. Gut bacteria can help us break down food, can help us make vitamins. It's fascinating, and it's hugely important in supporting the immune system. But we're now turning to kind of the vaginal microbiome and seeing how important that is there. And actually, unlike the gut, it needs a dominant species of lactobacillus. So we actually don't want to see diversity within the vagina. We want to see one dominant species, and that's called lactobacillus.
Okay.
And that keeps it kind of healthy.
Amazing. And it's incredible, isn't it, that we don't ever think of, whenever we talk about bacteria, we think about infections and we think about bad health, don't we? When actually it's quite the opposite in the case of the microbiome, providing that there's a greater balance of good bacteria as opposed to having more of the bad bacteria. So it's quite a learning sort of an eye opener, isn't it? If you're hearing this for the first time in
particular,
so it's something really to look into. Yeah. Wow.
We're outnumbered by these bacteria by, I think it's about 10 to 1, specifically within the gut. So we are teeming with them, and on the whole, beneficial and healthy. And the more we have of the kind of healthy stuff, the more we keep pathogens at bay.
Absolutely.
And they don't affect them. And it's just when we're compromised that, unfortunately, these pathogens may cause us problems.
Absolutely. As they say, we're more bacterial than human, aren't we? So we've got to start looking after these bugs in our bodies. Amazing. So you touched on one of the sort of difficulties that may, sort of appear when this microbiome is offset in terms of conception. And I thought we'd perhaps make our conversation sort of more kind of fine-tuned in terms of the things that you see in clinic related to sort of couples conceiving and healthy pregnancies. So are there any general kind of sort of features you see or factors that from a male and female perspective that may sort of hinder a successful pregnancy and make conception harder than it should be?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, having a dominant species of lactobacillus is very protective, and that has been found to be very beneficial for various pregnancy outcomes in both the female and the male. So in the female, now evidence that there's bacteria within the kind of womb itself, so within the endometrium, within the cervix. Bacteria has been found in the fallopian tubes. So you see how having a healthy bacteria might actually impact higher up as well. Within the males, the bacteria that impacts is actually specifically within the seminal fluid. And although research on males is a lot lower than what it is on females, very initial research shows that, again, lactobacillus is positive for men, and the kind of semen quality, and some pathogens such as urea plasma, and some of the kind of bacterial vaginosis causing microbes in women, and have been found to be slightly detrimental to the quality of things like fertility. So yes, absolutely, there are links to having certain microbes and some of the pregnancy outcomes, and that includes for the female simply getting pregnant in the first place. But some pathogens can increase risk of miscarriage, sadly, and that's specifically the BV causing microbes, so Gardnerella, Actinomium, Prevotella. So finding out if you have any of these bacteria, particularly if you've had some miscarriages, is a really good next step to trying to progress. And they are also linked to preterm birth. So this is possibly when women have had their membranes rupture early on. So that might be weeks kind of 34, 35, a bit earlier than we'd like. That can actually be linked to possibly having too much inflammation in the vaginal canal, which can be linked to having pathogens there.
Wow, amazing. So, this is really worth looking into and researching. As you say, if you've got a history of, unsuccessful pregnancies, then, it serves to kind of look into what you've got. That's kind of going to provide the environment for the growth of a new human beings, effectively, isn't it? So to make sure that you are in the best place to conceive successfully. So you touched on sort of the diet aspect, and I think that's something that people may not always think is so obvious, even though, I think from a very general perspective, everyone agrees that diet is important for everything in some way or shape or form. So how and why, if you do, what kind of dietary changes do you make to your clients to support them getting closer to that, that all conception goal? So, I mean, food is important in some way, and if it is, how does that matter?
The mechanism that kind of how food works is that the healthier the diet, the healthier the gut microbiome, and then the gut microbiome can have an impact on the other microbiomes of the body, and they are linked. Okay. So from that perspective, nurturing our kind of good bacteria, and that's through things like probiotic foods and prebiotic foods. So that's, eating regularly things like kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha. Homemade is better, but buying it is easier for a lot of people. Prebiotics feed the good bacteria, so that's eating things like oats, bananas, artichokes, leeks. Kind of in the main, just upping fruit and veg is a really beneficial thing for the microbiome. And then kind of more systemic things are, reducing sugar is always a really good, important thing to do, because sugar feeds pathogenic bacteria and yeasts. And as well, sugar can drive inflammation in the body, which we don't really want. So trying to have less sugar is always a good thing. And I don't say cut it out completely, just have sugar in its more natural form. So honey and maple syrup if you're baking, or coconut sugar is much more preferable to just white sugar and tea. As I've said, increasing kind of plant foods is really beneficial. Fiber is important to keep kind of good gut motility. So that means kind of going to the toilet at least once a day. That can impact good hormone levels and things like that. Staying hydrated is really important. So flushing out the bladder, and that's things like drinking about 2 litres of water or kind of clear fluids a day is really important. Healthy fats can be really important for conception because they contain omega-3, which is anti-inflammatory. So that's making sure you're getting your oily fish like salmon, sardines, mackerel, etc. Just trying to eat foods in their whole form, I always think is super important, and just trying to reduce that processed food is one of the simplest places to start.
Sure. And things like nuts and seeds would be quite a good way to get sort of fats in as well. Avocados, olives, would you say as well? I mean, there's people out there thinking, oh, I can't do this oily fish, and I get it all the time, like I don't eat fish. So I'm like, okay, let's look at an alternative. So flax is a good one as well, isn't it? Would you advise flax as well? So freshly ground,
as well are good for omega-3.
Sure.
If you're trying to conceive and not eating any fish, you can consider supplements.
Sure.
Speak to someone
before you go ahead and amazing. And so what about for those people who are sort of quite keen on their coffees in the morning, like addicted to like 6 cups of coffee a day? How would you deal with those people?
I'd say 6 is quite a lot and trying to minimize it, but I'm all about balance as well. I think 1 or 2 coffees a day is actually totally fine. Coffee has some health benefits. It really depends where you're at within your health journey and what are your issues. So if you have bladder problems, yes, I would be suggesting caffeine is an irritant. It contains histamine too, which can increase inflammation. So we tend to cut that out. But coffee, if you overall have a good diet, isn't a bad thing and should be enjoyed. But I think 6 will be a lot on your liver, and that's a lot of caffeine, and
absolutely.
Sleep may be impacted there.
Which is another factor to consider as well, isn't it? Sleep and lifestyle, and I'm sure we're going to touch into that a bit more later on. So in terms of that fluid, I think that's an amazing a tip there, because most of us are dehydrated, even if we're not in that kind of phase of life. And I'm always speaking to my clients about drinking more water and trying to get more hydrated and making sure that their urine is like a nice clear colour throughout the day. And then not drinking all of your fluid in one go. That's a really important thing as well, because some people are like, okay, I'll just drink my 4 glasses in the morning, and then they're lightheaded for the rest of the the morning. So it's about increasing your fluid with nice filtered clean water, and then making that sort of something that you do during the course of the day. So obviously if it's going to keep you up at night, not to drink too late at night. So just kind of space that out throughout the day, so you're hydrated over the course of the day, whether that's you taking sips throughout the day and then drinking before your meals. Is that what you find as well, or?
Yes, I think that's an important point there, because a lot of people might drink gallons with meal because it's convenient. You suggest to people drinking away from meals is more beneficial, because if we overhydrate at a meal, we actually kind of dilute the digestive enzymes which are useful to break down a meal. So I would encourage people to drink, as you said, little and often throughout the day. A good way of doing this is if you have a big kind of 1.5 litre bottle of water and fill it up, and you just know that, right, I've got to finish that bottle by, say, 4 p.m, have little sips on it all day long, and then you know that in the evening you have another 2 glasses, then you've hit your target of 2 litres a day, which is a kind of a healthy target. So just finding ways that suit you in your lifestyle.
Absolutely.
And if you're on the go, having something there with you.
Yeah. Amazing. That's a great tip, actually, and it's there. It's like a visual reminder that we most often than not need, don't we? So, I mean, I'm terrible myself for drinking, so I know how difficult it can be. And then you've got apps and things as well that you can utilize if you're a phone person. So, there's so many ways and means to do it. And then if you've got a buddy that you can buddy up with, and you can remind each other to drink, whether that's your spouse when you're at home or a colleague while you're at work. Even your kids, get your kids on board, because, they've got to start young, haven't they now? We realise that, it's got to start young and it's got to kind of build. And, good habits are set when you're younger, aren't they? So you want to carry them through life. That's amazing.
Yeah, and if it needs to be tasty. I'm a big fan of herbal teas, and they can be really beneficial.
Yeah.
If you've got use, try licorice. If you want to get the digestive system moving, try ginger.
Amazing.
Got a bit of bloating, try fennel. There's a lot of different ones you can pair up with what you're going through.
I mean, that's a minefield out there, isn't it? Your sport for choice when you go out shopping for teas now. Yeah. I never know what to get because there's just so many nice looking packages on the shelf. But absolutely, that's so amazing. So just as a reminder for our listeners, then today's show is about information, and it's about looking at what you could do for your own health using that information that's been provided to you. So it's no way providing medical advice. Obviously, this is going to be quite personal to many of you who are listening, or you'll know someone who's on this journey. So it's always important to take on board what you hear and then go and speak to your medical practitioner for any concern that you have, regardless of whether it's related to today or not. It's always important to get that reassurance from your doctor, because remember, they're there to help you, and it's about us all working together. So as you heard Jessica say, we provide that additional information, that support that perhaps may not come from your GP given the short time and space that they have to see you. So always make sure that that's always ground that's covered, because at the end of the day, your safety is our utmost it's going to be of paramount importance to us as well as practitioners, and it's something that we do ourselves when we see clients. If we suspect any any sort of investigation is needed or anything is needing to be looked at further, then we'll always advise our clients to go and see their GP first and foremost. So that's been absolutely fascinating. I can't wait to hear more. But before we go into the second part of the show, we've got a little break coming up now. So you're listening to me, Shazia, on Unity FM 93.5 FM on the Nutrition Show. We're joined today by our amazing guest, Jessica Charles. We'll be back after this short break. Welcome back to the Nutrition Show. You're joining me, Shazia, on Unity FM 93.5 FM with our special guest today, Jessica Charles, and a nutritional therapist specialising in female intimate health. So we'll be diving into more gems shortly, but just a reminder that our discussion, if you're joining us for the second half of the show, is just for information purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. For any health issues or concerns that you do have, please do consult with your own medical practitioner. So welcome back, Jessica. We're so honoured to have you today on the show.
Thank you.
So we were hearing all about how foods can help support the vaginal microbiome and just general health and well-being of couples who are going on this amazing journey of starting a family. It's a special time and you want things to work out well. Naturally, you're going to be really curious, and you're going to be anxious, so these kinds of support mechanisms are so important to make sure that those anxieties that you don't really think about, perhaps when it comes to kind of very specific health issues, are not really there. You want them to be kind of all well and in the best place, I guess. So we know that foods can help or hinder then making a baby in the process, so to speak. So as nutritional therapists, we like to look at things, different tools that we can use to support our clients on their journey. So food is one of those tools, and that's a tool that we, is our mainstay. But there are also, amazing sort of tools that are kind of appearing on the market now for us, particularly, and for other people in their, specific fields, where we can kind of take health to a different level because we have access to more insight, more data than perhaps the regular practitioners may have. So this is where I'm talking about functional testing. So a lot of people may not be aware of functional testing, but this is where we're using tests that we can, get people to do at home, whether that be a blood test, whether that be a stool test, whether that be a breath test, even a saliva test for various markers and measures that we want to look at. And we can actually extract so much data from those tests to see basically what is going on in this person's body that may be hindering their progress in a particular area. And, the vaginal microbiome is one of those. So I'm really interested for you to share with our listeners, Jessica, what you have found in terms of, the testing that you do in your clients, in terms of what kind of test you do and what they can sort of provide to you in terms of the data that's available, and then how that helps the client getting closer to becoming sort of, more kind of in an optimal position to achieving, say, a successful pregnancy in the case of conception, please.
That's fine. So for couples trying to conceive, because I work in intimate health, and I actually work for a testing company who does these specific tests, I do a lot of vaginal microbiome and seminal fluid microbiome tests.
Wow.
And we look at these. Some people may have symptoms, and so we're kind of looking for specific things, but some people may not have any, and we're just checking the environment is kind of conducive to them going forward with their pregnancy plans, whether that's natural or whether that's via IVF.
Sure.
And we're just looking at basically at the mix of microbes there. So how much good bacteria versus how many pathogens. And that's both relevant for the female and for the male. And then depending on what comes back, there's various options. If there are pathogens there, we can, in some cases, send them back to their GP for certain antibiotics. Or if it's kind of mild, there's various options to work naturally to try to increase the good bacteria against the bad bacteria. So we come up with a personalised plan, whatever we find.
Sure.
But when it comes to conception and fertility, there are various other tests that I would always kind of check have been done. And these are basic things to make sure there's nothing obvious that we can then kind of intervene with and optimize. So some of the tests that I would always look at, things like looking at the full blood counts, so white blood cells and red blood cells. Look at basic hormones, so what levels are estrogen, what levels are the progesterone, and then just checking LH and FSH for things like ovulation. Checking thyroid is always a really good idea, because the thyroid hormones are very instrumental in just managing many functions within the body.
Sure.
I'd always check for iron, vitamin D, ferritin, folate, B12. These are a lot of the standard GP tests that are really useful to look into. Checking for anything physical is important with conception, so checking the male and the female. This involves scans, checking for any kind of things like fibroids or anything that might be causing an issue. Then I do know there are a lot of very specific private tests that you can get to go a bit further with checking how kind of ready a couple is for conception. But I have to say I don't do that. I pass them on to kind of an expert in an area, or a lot of these are now carried out by IVF clinics if you're going down that route, to basically optimize the outcomes as well.
Wow, amazing. And so you can see how, the healthcare that your GP is providing is so instrumental to that kind of foundation, isn't it? So you use what they provide and then you build on that to get that further kind of layer, I guess, isn't it, really, to get some more data if there is more work that can be done. And are these tests invasive, or how do they work? Do people need to go in for any particular procedure, or how do they do them, or how do they get involved?
No, so they're super easy. You can, some tests you have to do via a practitioner. Some you can actually just order directly yourselves, and you'll get a package in the post with a swab. For a male, you get a little pot. For the female, you literally just put it back in a kind of test tube. These are then sent back to a lab, and then you get results within kind of a few weeks to about 6 weeks. And a lot of these companies then offer support to translate what the results mean, because it's not always easy if you haven't seen tests before to know what to do with it.
Absolutely.
And this is what I specialise in kind of guiding couples with what's the next step for you.
Absolutely.
And it's not, I would definitely say it's not black and white, like if you've got a chest infection, you go and get antibiotics. And it's very straightforward. We've got to look at what state the female or the male is in. We've got to look at where they are in their pregnancy journey. Are they doing IVF, or are they trying to do it naturally? What are their timescales? So sometimes we consider age. Obviously, older couples want to be, get on with things quicker. So we take that into account. And we take into account the mix of microbes. It can be severe to very mild. We just look at where they're at and exactly what's presenting us, and therefore we match it to the treatment. So they can be very, very insightful. I would say it's an area to look at, and it is relatively cheap compared to going down more assisted reproductive treatment. And if you've had things like BV in the past, or if you've had UTIs, or if you've had thrush, indicates there's possibly an imbalance there. So it's definitely an area to research. But if you haven't, I would just say that in many cases of BV, symptoms are actually asymptomatic, i.e. you don't have any symptoms.
Sure.
And actually a lot of women just live with these imbalances and they don't impact them. And it's only when you come to possibly trying to conceive that this is when they're picked up. So yeah, it's definitely a route to look at, if you want to kind of take more control and find out more about your body.
And being prepared is better than sort of going into something not knowing. And I would rather be prepared than sort of try something and then find myself disappointed. So I think that's such a good way to kind of educate oneself on, and then go down that route so that you're more likely to kind of get the result that you're looking for. I know we didn't speak about this before, but how important, Jessica, is lifestyle for these people in terms of, say, for example, I know there's a whole load of things we can look at, but stress and sleep in particular. We talk about this a lot generally for anyone who comes into clinic, and I'm sure you do too, but how do you find that impacts on couples who are perhaps looking to start a family?
Yes, I would say stress is a huge one, because cortisol is such the hormone that is released when we're stressed, and when that is high, other things in the body are not manufactured. So high cortisol will hugely impact your balance of hormones, and we need good hormone levels to conceive.
Absolutely.
Cortisol will also impact the immune system and the gut, and so if they're slightly compromised, that can have a knock-on impact. Sleep is also important, like you say, because often if we have poor sleep, we might eat badly, we might feel more stressed. Again, it can have a knock-on impact. But when it comes to certain lifestyle tips, what I would say that's important is the vagina is best left to its own devices. So it is self-cleaning.
Sure.
It doesn't need washing every day, doesn't need any kind of douching. These are practices that we need to leave behind. There are products on the shelves of supermarkets, unfortunately, that are telling you to use this intimate wash.
Yeah.
And actually, they're really not beneficial. They throw off the pH, and the pH is a very important determinant of health within that area. We don't want to be doing that. So I would just, the advice is just shower, splash it with water, and that's enough.
Wow. Okay.
The other advice is things like, it doesn't like moist and warm conditions. So if you exercise a lot and sit in lycra, all day, every day, that's not beneficial. Sitting in a wet swimming costume isn't beneficial. Making sure you change period products regularly is really important. And just being aware, things like antibiotics, which are obviously very important in certain situations, these can have a knock-on impact on the microbiome.
Sure.
So, after a round of antibiotics, I would always be looking to try to restore health to the microbiome. So that's eating well, eating probiotic foods, and just being more aware if any symptoms do appear, to kind of treat them early.
Sure. So repopulating that bacteria that you needed, actually, that the antibiotics tend to kill off as collateral damage, isn't it? So absolutely. So getting those bacteria back in and feeding them as well while you're getting them to kind of recolonize the gut and the microbiome and all the other microbiomes that are offset. Amazing. And I love the practical advice you gave there. We're all kind of like overly clean, aren't we? We just want to kind of continue to wash ourselves all day, and we still don't feel clean. It's a little bit of OCD coming in there, I think. And absolutely, you these perfumed and amazingly scented, beautiful bottles that we see, on the supermarkets. We do really need to do our research, don't we, as to what's going to benefit our body in terms of the way it's, our body is designed to look after itself, isn't it? And we're just kind of helping it along, so to speak, aren't we?
We don't want to interfere too much, and a tip would be to look for things that say pH balanced. That means it's not going to disturb the area too much.
Sure.
But yeah, like you say, just don't overuse things. The area just needs to be kind of kept quite balanced. not interfered with too much.
Absolutely amazing. I love that advice, and it's actually one that we don't really think about, do we? We kind of assume that the more you wash, the cleaner the better, but actually it's not always the way. Amazing. So I just wondered, I guess this is a big one because everyone is unique, and no two people are the same, even when they're presenting with similar kind of cases to us. But if you had to think of 3 challenges you see as a practitioner working with your clients, particularly when it comes to conception, what would they be?
So when it comes to conception, I think it's understanding before you go down the IVF route, what other things to investigate first that might be kind of less intrusive and less costly really later on down the line. And we believe very much there's not unexplained fertility. That shouldn't really be a thing. It's just that the cause hasn't been found yet.
Okay.
The NHS can take you so far in trying to find out if there's anything not helpful. And I mentioned some of those things earlier, like blood tests, scans. That's all wonderful. You should make sure you take advantage of that and that your GP does what they need. And then it's just trying to access the further testing that might point you to any other areas that aren't optimal. And the main way to do that is to seek out a qualified practitioner. So that might be somebody working in the fertility space. It might be a specific clinic that specialises in pregnancy, and they might suggest some kind of initial tests to do to just check that there's anything else that can't be addressed. The only unfortunate thing is that some of this costs money and it's not available via the NHS, but just seeking out if there is anything else is always a good option when it comes to conception. Unfortunately, with stuff like the microbiome as well, I would say there's no silver bullet. There's not one pill that you can take and overnight
sorted.
Wonderful again.
Yeah.
A lot of the time I work with couples or people for months, and it is beneficial because we see amazing results, but it takes a bit of time and effort. We work on various things, but the outcomes are that a lot of health factors are influenced for the better. People come out of it saying, I've got better energy, I'm sleeping well, my skin's better.
Wow.
So they're really nice benefits. The only other thing I was going to say is that, as I mentioned, research within this area is still so new. And so for me, it's about keeping up to date with the new research and new studies, and kind of translating what they mean for my clients so that I can serve my clients better.
Sure.
And I really think, in 10 years' time, in another 20 years' time, the knowledge we have on this space is going to be so much more superior. And therefore we can help women so much better because we're just still finding out about some of the basics, and I think there's a lot more layers that we can find out about, a bit like the gut. It's taken us decades to understand it further.
Absolutely. It's kind of in its infancy, isn't it? It's sort of early days, but as you say, as the research comes in, it allows us to have that additional information then to serve our clients better. Yeah, amazing. That's so useful to know, actually, because again, it's going to be information that people are probably hearing for the first time, and I think there's nothing like doing your own research. Is there kind of finding out as much as you can and then taking it to someone who understands it and working with someone. And I think when you were talking about the testing, it's so easy to just order an online test and get the report and then sit and worry about what those results actually mean, when actually you really should be working with someone who can guide you and support you in that journey, because with it being so new and with it being so technical at times. It's always good working with someone who's actually taken the time to understand and learn that area of health, so that then they're there to support you in what matters to you, which is getting that result, rather than becoming even more anxious when you've got a blood test result. I know when I used to have blood test results when I didn't understand much about the scientific fields, I used to get even more anxious than I had than before going in for the test, because I was like, what do I do with these now? What do they mean now that I've got the results? So you want to be moving forward, and I think, as you mentioned, I think it's so important to seek out that specialist, that person that is going to be able to help you with getting you to that next step. And make sure that person's accredited, make sure they're registered, they're not just someone you just happen to find on the internet that's offering you a really good offer and saying, come and work with me. But that's not about that. It's about your health and investing in the right place. So that's so amazing.
Yeah.
I think, kind of looking at everything, and I think we've touched on some of these things already. And I could talk about this topic all day. It's such an amazing area to kind of want to know more about. And I've learned some new stuff today, which I'll take away and use in my clinics now as well. But it's just so beneficial. But if you had to kind of sum up maybe sort of 3 pieces of advice generally for men and women out there, so, you guys listen and take away something too, because it's really important. What would you say that people can start doing today? Really easy things that are not going to sort of, be, a case of breaking the bank, so to speak, because they're so expensive, or they're, so time consuming that they're like, oh, I can't do this, I'm just too busy. What can they start doing today? Just 3 things to start them off with that can get them closer to kind of starting a family, if that's where they're at in their time of life right now.
Mm-hmm. I think number 1 would be avoid processed foods, and so avoid anything that comes in a packet with various ingredients, because there's so many implications of eating too much of these foods. We don't have the right balance of fats that can drive inflammation. The sugars in them can drive blood sugar imbalance, which can drive various chronic conditions.
Absolutely.
And also they are devoid of nutrients. So they're nutrients that we need for conception. There's so many different things. We need zinc, selenium, iron. You won't get any of those through processed foods. Mm-hmm. So try to remove any of the packaging and just buy foods in their normal
in their whole form, isn't it? Yeah. How they look in nature. So I say to people, how do they look like? What do they look like in nature? Buy them without the label. Absolutely.
And what it really means is that you're skipping about, I don't even know, a half of the supermarket. You want to be going down the aisles that have the fruit and veg, the meat. I'm a big fan of kind of eating animal products for health. They've got a good superior amount of nutrition in them. So I wouldn't say there's anything in the whole foods world that I would necessarily cut out. And nuts, seeds, fish, whether that's tinned, that's okay, or fresh, that's fine, but just trying to eat all the lovely foods that nature gives us.
Absolutely.
Is my biggest tip. That's probably number 2. And then probably number 3 for the conception is definitely just manage stress levels and look after yourself as much as possible. The impact stress has on the body, it can impact so many different areas of our health. Like I said, hormones, it can impact the digestion, therefore how much we actually absorb at the end of the day. Our immune system, which is important for conception. So just trying to manage it, and that might be a very individual thing. We might say meditate, but it might not work.
Yeah,
that's okay. Find something that you like.
Yeah.
And if lowering stress means going out with your friends, or watching a film, doing yoga, going for a run, just do what suits you. You don't need to meditate or do kind of breathing exercises, although they're wonderful, if they suit you as well. It's just trying to get that balance so that you're not in that kind of fight or flight mode. Absolutely. Which is when we're very tense and we have a lot of adrenaline running around our body, which again can impact us very negatively. We need to be in the parasympathetic mode, which is relaxed, calm. We can digest our food properly. We can sleep well, and then lots of other things will kind of snowball from that are beneficial. But they would be my top 3 tips.
Amazing. And those are just so big on their own, aren't they? You can split them up and you can start somewhere with each one of those. So just take one good food today. If you've always eaten packaged foods, start with one change today. Whether that is you just add another vegetable to your diet. And as Jessica said, you'll actually cut out so much of the aisle that you're going to be doing less walking around the supermarket. Visit your local farms, visit local produce is always good, isn't it? You're seeking out the nutrients in their natural form, and you're less tempted in these places because that's what you normally see. Think about adding spices and herbs to make your food taste better. I know that's a big thing that my clients will say, that I don't like the taste of those vegetables or those those kinds of those particular food types. Well, you need to think of how to make it interesting for yourself, and the easy things are salads, soups, smoothies. I mean, what excuse do we have for doing these simple things? I mean, most of the times you just pop the stuff into your smoothie maker, your soup maker, your instant pot, whatever it is that you're using, and away you go. It's all done for you. It's so easy. And you think about routine. How can you fit these things in? When can you fit them in? Batch cooking, we talk about quite a lot as nutritional therapists. We talk about, planning. These are all important. You plan for the rest of your week, so why not plan these things in? Take up a hobby, as Jessica mentioned, whether meditation doesn't work for you, that's okay. Think about an exercise regime that could work for you. Think about a hobby that you really enjoy. Make sure it's a regular thing. Meeting up with that person that helps helps you see sense in that crazy world. All those things are so imperative to actually helping you on that journey, aren't they? Even if you're not at that stage where you're looking to start a family, these are important for our day-to-day functioning. So it makes so much more sense that if you're wanting to make a new human being, that you've got to have the right environment. Because remember, our bodies are not going to be able to go that far if our bodies are not ready to actually produce a healthy human being. So it does make sense. There will be reasons for why you're not able to conceive. Most of the time, we can get to the bottom of them. Obviously, every case is each by each. And we want to kind of make sure that you seek out that medical advice, get all the information from your doctor, your specialist, and then seek out those additional layers of support, like what like Jessica is actually involved in. So where she's looking at the data at a far more detailed level, and then being able to give you that tailored advice alongside the advice that you've taken from your GP and your specialist. So amazing. We could just go on all day talking about this, couldn't we, Jessica? It's just such a lovely and amazing topic, and incredibly interesting as well. So, I mean, I know when people start looking at the information that's out there, they're going to be equally, interested and wanting to know more. So I just want to say what an honour it's been speaking to you today. I appreciate the time that you've taken out, Jessica, to come and, speak to our audience, to educate them, to empower them, to get them to look at the data for themselves, which is available out there. As this is, something that we can spend time on. I mean, we read stuff online all the time. Why not do that for our own health and invest in our health in that way? For everyone listening in, I hope that what you've heard today has been insightful and gets you looking into what could work for your health while seeking that support that we've mentioned. I would love to hear your thoughts, and as always, feedback is appreciated for every show, for every piece of information that we share. So you're joining me, Shazia, on the Nutrition Show on Unity FM 93.5 FM. Thank you again to Jessica Charles for joining us today. We're really grateful for your pearls of wisdom, and we're grateful for another opportunity to connect with you. Take care until next time. Wassalamu alaikum.